Well, for more on China and Germany's economic cooperation, we're joined by Maximilian Reck. He's Program Director and Assistant Professor in International Affairs at the ESSCA School of Management in Shanghai. Now, as we know, this is the first visit to China for Merkel since her re-election as Chancellor. What are the top economic priorities for her?
Hello, Michelle. Good to be back. Now, Merkel's visit is one in a row of visits. It's the first since the election, that is correct, but it's her 11th visit to China. And in that sense, she is one of the Western leaders that has been joining China, has been joining Xi Jinping and Li Keqiang most often. Her priorities revolve very much around creating a calm environment in such a complex global situation. She wants to discuss multilateralism. She wants to discuss intellectual property rights, and she wants to further cooperation between China and Germany on her trip. I do think that multilateralism is something that she really wants to discuss with Li Keqiang and Xi Jinping, and this is something which can then drive also negotiations in the WTO and hence kickstart the global economy in order to create growth both in China as well as in Germany.
Now, we saw that President Xi pledged to work with Germany to bring bilateral relations to a new high. So what are the strongest areas of cooperation that the two countries share?
Now, I mean, if we look at the trade between the two countries, then we do see that Germany is importing a lot from China, roughly 100 billion euros worth of goods and services, and vice versa. Germany is also exporting a lot to China, roughly 80 billion euros. That means that there's a trade imbalance, but this trade imbalance is not as pronounced as the trade imbalance with the United States and China, where we have roughly 400 billion euros of trade imbalance. In other words, Germany and China have been always working together, especially with regards to the import and export of machinery, high-end manufacturing. And I think that if we look at Industry 4.0 and China Manufacturing 2025, the two countries' economies are really complementary, and hence this is something that we should focus on in terms of cooperation for the future.
Aren't familiar, China's Made in China 2025 initiative really focuses on upgrading not just manufacturing, but some of these high-tech sectors of the future. And this is open to foreign investors. So how do you see the two countries working together on this?
I think investment is key here. For the time being, there's more German companies in China than there is Chinese companies in Europe. The order of comparison is roughly 5,000 Germanys being invested in China and 900 companies from China being invested in Germany. I think this can be increased. If we create a level playing field, market access which is based on equality between foreign and domestic enterprises, then I think that that has a very bright future. In terms of investment, German companies have some know-how that they can share with the Chinese, and the Chinese are so good in bringing technology to market, focusing on consumer markets, and I do think that there is a lot of potential for future growth between those two countries. You have talked early on the show about automobiles and how tariffs are brought down, etc. But I think that some German companies are still very wary about the intellectual property, the market access, the level playing field. So if the Chinese government manages to actually recomfort the foreign companies with regards to the legal environment, I think that the future for investment is very positive.
Now, as
we could talk about China Manufacturing 2025 as well, and Industry 4.0.
I do also want to get to this, because obviously we know that Germany and China are big trade partners, and they're also both huge trade partners of the US. And we know that they're both being subject to tariffs now, the metal tariffs, and now we know that the US might additionally start looking at auto tariffs as well. What sort of position does this put Germany in as it tries to balance its interests of China and the US?
China is one of our most important trading partners. As a matter of fact, for the second consecutive year, China is Germany's most important trading partner. But the United States and the transatlantic relationship will always remain important. If you look at the overall European Union, then trade with the United States is still important. Now, we do have a White House which is not as determined to keep up multilateralism, the WTO, etc. And that is why Angela Merkel is very happy to have a close ally in China with Xi Jinping and Li Keqiang, who are standing up for multilateralism just as well. And I do think that this can create an environment in which the economies of Germany and China can thrive if we manage to actually import-export automobiles, other manufactured goods, high-end manufacturing into each other's markets, then you can create wealth on the Eurasian landmass, even if the United States decides to isolate itself for a given period of time, which I think, by the way, is of limited time in nature.
All right, thank you very much, Maximilian Reck from the ESSCA School of Management.